Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Chakra Meditation Podcast. And today I have the great pleasure of introducing you to Dr. Angele Close. And Angele is a psychologist. And most significantly, the thing that we are going to discuss today, she is a motherhood coach and the author of the book Unburdening Motherhood. And yeah, when I found Angele, I was like, this is an important subject. I know that there's many of you out there who are mothers. I think probably everybody out there has a mother, either somebody who brought them up or a carer of some sort. But most of us are lucky enough to had a mother, and processing everything that our mothers specifically do for us and sometimes to us in terms of energetics and healing is so important. But what we're going to talk about today is being a mother, because that is a weighty, weighty subject. So, Angele, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really
Yeah.
excited to be here.
Yeah. So, obviously, psychologist, and then you took a niche,
Mhm.
decided to dive deep into this motherhood, what it is to be a mother. What drew you to this? What started you on this path?
Yeah, well, my own experience of parenting for
Mm,
sure. I was fortunate enough to have the early years fairly smooth, healthy, wanted three babies, had them all. Um, those early years seemed to go, I mean, of course, extremely exhausting, because I had my third child. They're now teens, but back then I had just finished graduate school. So it was certainly busy, busy, busy. But
mm,
it seemed to be fairly smooth. For me, it was when my kids started to get like 8 or 9, was my oldest, and the things that I expected to happen in terms of, discipline, and I do air quotes because I don't like that word, but when
mm,
my kids got to an age where I thought they should listen to me and I thought I would have more control. And it turned out, I mean, I have three very strong-willed, big personality children. My firstborn is neurodiverse, and things just weren't working. And I was trying to juggle it all, have the career, have the three kids. And of course, around this time, we moved countries. So we moved from Canada to the US. And, and then it was COVID. So here we were on lockdown. And I remember just really struggling internally. I had my mindfulness practice. I thought I was all Zen. I was in my 30s. I'd done therapy. I was a psychologist. I thought, why is this so hard, And of course, I was blaming myself at this time because that's the
mhm.
default is when things are hard. We just think, well, I guess I'm doing it wrong and maybe I shouldn't have, maybe I'm no good at motherhood. And then I listened to a podcast one morning on the treadmill, and it was called The Happy Mama Movement. And she talked about this word matrescence. So by then, I had been a mom for almost a decade before I learned there's actually this word that that represents all the changes, the profound transformation women go through becoming mothers, that
Mm.
inner split, feeling pulled between your ambitions and your career and your interests, and then of course wanting to show up to be the best for your kids, but feeling that inner pull is one such change, but there are many. And as I started to study this word and understand it, it was profoundly impactful for me because it's sort of just having that term helped me
Mm.
shed a lot of that self-blame. Like I thought, oh, this is the thing. Just like adolescents, just like teens go through this profound identity transformation of figuring out who they are, and women go
So,
through it too as we become mothers. And so I just became very passionate to spread the word. I thought, how is it that moms don't know that they're in this profound transformative phase
yeah.
that is can break us open, that has potential for true healing, breaking generational trauma. But it seemed, at least in my circle, no one was talking about it. So
Mm.
that was what led me to really study and to help moms specifically.
So that's wonderful. So you've got this word, matrescence, in the same vein as adolescence,
That's right.
becoming a mother. I mean, I remember very clearly, I had my kids, both my kids before I was 30, and I didn't really think about it too hard. I was like, yeah, we're ready for kids. Let's have a couple of kids. Great. And
Yeah.
the second one came along a bit faster than we'd maybe planned, but, we were in it. But what I don't think you realize is the massive shift. Like you were one person when you walked into that hospital or before you gave birth, and you are a completely different person as soon as you hold your baby in your arms. As soon as you become a mother, that is it.
Yeah.
It's black and white, and I don't think that is talked about enough. I think people are more aware of it now, and certainly those who've waited to watch their friends go through it have maybe gathered the incredible difference. But the friends that you had that don't have children, you have nothing in common with them for like 8 years. It's like
Right.
you just go into a completely different world, and and it can be, and it really challenges your identity because your hormones and everything that you are feeling is just like my priorities are completely changed, and basically my main aim is to just look after this child, keep this child alive, essentially, so,
That's right.
and give it the best that it can. But keeping it alive, that's your number one priority. And everything else doesn't matter. But we are drawn going, oh, I remember 14 weeks after I gave birth.
Mhm.
So we're talking a while back in the UK. You get more maternity leave now. My boss called me up at probably about 12 weeks after I'd had my baby, the first one, and said, "Are you coming back to work?" And I said, "Well, no. No, I'm not. I'm not. I'm still breastfeeding. I'm like, I'm not going to leave this 14-week-old infant with somebody else to come and sit
Yeah.
in your office and do computers. No, I'm not. It's but before I had the baby, I was like, yeah, I'll go back to work. We'll sort out. I'll find something. But yeah, it's a completely different world. So this is where you come in. This is the psychology of this is fascinating.
Yeah, and I agree with you that it's not talked about enough. It wasn't for me. I mean, I had read
Mm,
all these books, right? What to expect when you're expecting, and they all focus on
mm.
the child.
Yeah.
And you're right. The obviously, because humans are so dependent when they're born, like that is the number one priority. But all of that, like the reality is moms feel ambivalence. Moms feel all kinds of feelings, like even just the fact that you mentioned friendships change, relationships change. I had no
Mm,
idea. Like, I would have one relationship with my mother-in-law before I now gave birth to her grandchild. And suddenly we had a completely different relationship. But it's so nuanced and nobody was like talking about it. And of course, as the therapist, I'm fascinated by like emotional changes, spiritual shifts, identity, and all of this was happening. But without the conversations around me, I just felt so, as I said, I thought something was wrong with me. And so when I learned this word, it was just so validating. And I want mothers to understand this because number one, I think it helps alleviate some of that shame and some of that self-blame because there are all these myths that we've absorbed. So matrescence acknowledges that's one of the things that it really reflects, which is this conditioning we all carry, that across generations, there are cultural and social ideas about what it means to be a good mom. And it changes
mm.
generation to generation,
Yeah.
right? And yet we all absorb it, we see it modeled, we hear it. Just yesterday I was in a store, Roseanne, buying a gift, and I saw this mug that said super mom on it. And I
Mm,
just get so agitated because that's the modern day mom is sort of subjected to this model of super. So she has both an amazing career and she's killing it at the office, and she's also, got all the things for the kids, which nowadays is just immense demands, right? For
mm,
with the digital age and the school expects involvement, like it's
mhm.
not at all what it was, at least in my mom's generation.
Let alone the home cooked organic food,
That's right.
meal when they will come home from school.
That's right.
It's just
That's right.
impossible. Plus looking after the
Impossible.
home.
That's right. Because
Plus
now we have
looking
all
after
this
the
research.
relationship as well.
The marriage, your own
Yeah.
fitness, your own well-being. It is
Mm,
impossible for
mm,
women to meet this standard and to do it all. And one of the myths, I talk about five in my book, but there are many. And one of them is this idea that you don't ask for help. So to be a super mom, I mean, you don't need a village. You're supposed to be keeping that great house and looking great and managing all the relationships for your family. And like it's just insane. And so women will usually, by the time they see me, they've been trying their very best, of course. They're literally depleting themselves, killing themselves to be this super mom. And then to think that then to turn against themselves because they think they're just not good enough. It drives me just absolutely mad.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's an absolute tragedy and a travesty that mothers should feel that way. But there are a lot of women and a lot of families and a lot of single mums for where the situation is that the mother has to continue working. There's just no choice, and so that is of course there's lots of people who want to work and want to maintain their autonomy and so on. But then from where what I have observed is that on the whole they either feel guilty at work or they feel guilty at home, and there's no middle ground for them to exist in. So what's the answer for that side of
That's right.
part of that life? Because that's tough.
It is, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's become so part of the vernacular, mom guilt, you know. It's
Yeah,
we get it, we know
yeah.
because it's true. You can't, and that's how I was feeling when I sort of had this break, on my knees moment. And luckily learned about matrescence to know that that's why I feel that, right? So one is to understand the social conditioning, to sort of look at our culture, look at what we've come to believe it means to be a good mom. Like we have to become sort of self-aware first and just to 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 then begin to be able to question it. But first we have to notice that we're sort of swimming in it. Dr. Sophie Brock is a sociologist around motherhood as well, and she talks about this metaphor of, we're the fish and we're swimming in the fishbowl, but we're just swimming in it and we don't even realize what we've absorbed. And
Mm,
so the first step is well, that's why I love learning about the word, because the word gives that language to understand the process. And then we can get curious about, what has my own experience of motherhood been, right? Because every woman's experience of matrescence will be different and unique. Like you said,
mm,
some women are 100%, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom, and maybe they can do that, and that's great, and that's their whole identity. That's one path. And then, of course, there are women who say, I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want a career. And then, of course, there's tons in the middle, right?
mm,
And so we have to get curious for our own experience. Okay, what parts of me, and of course, for me, I use parts language because that's how I best understand the human psyche and how we're more like a system. So we have some parts of us that have really taken on this idea of what it means to be a good mom. Let's say I'm believing I should be a super mom.
mm.
Like, notice what that belief is leading you to. Are you depleting yourself, putting yourself last? Are you saying yes to everybody because you don't think you can say no? You're volunteering for all the clubs and you're totally overextending yourself. Because, of course, one of the myths of a good mom, quote unquote, is very self-sacrificing, right? So she
Yeah.
has no needs and no boundaries.
Yes.
And so we often see just self-sacrificing to a detriment.
Mm,
And so, if that's the case, right, is being able to, number one, forgive yourself, because this isn't about self-blame. We all absorb our cultural ideas about what it means. And of course, right, the stakes are high because we do love our children. So this is where, right, we love our kids. Of course, we want to be a good mom. So that's not being called into question, but rather I would say for each woman to sort of really take stock and to notice where the parts of her are believing these myths. So the myth that she should be all self-sacrificing, the myth that she should never ask for help, or then she's not a good mom, right? Um, and there are many, and just to really check in for herself. Am I believing this? Do I feel shame? Do I feel guilt? And get curious about that guilt. Because, I'm going on a rant, but just to say guilt is psychologically, we understand it can be a very healthy emotion. It tells us when we've behaved in a way that is in contradiction to our own values. So we feel
Yeah.
guilty, so we can, make a repair. I'm sorry that I did that. That wasn't, and it helps heal relationships. So it's a useful emotion. But guilt, when we have mom guilt, it's usually unhealthy guilt. It's
Mm,
because we're absorbing these ideas that we should be all things to everybody. And so we feel the guilt, but it's not true. Like we're basically buying into these myths of what a good
yeah.
mom is. And so I would say get curious about that mom guilt and then, talk with your girlfriends, or maybe you want to see a therapist or a healer or have conversations with other women to talk
Mm.
about your truth, your real feelings about what motherhood's really like for you so that you can then make it more conscious and then start the healing process and make decisions on, well, and I think also come to that understanding that I am a good mom, the way that I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that when you look back at your how you were parented, and you back at it with adult eyes and with awareness and learning behind you, you can see that your parents, however much they messed up or hurt you or left you with an abandonment wound or whatever it was that they did, they were just doing the best that they possibly could at the time. And that's something that I've definitely been really trying to absorb into myself. Because I think, when I look back, if I think, I often say to myself and to my friends, God, if I knew then what I knew now, what I know now about how children's minds develop, about how behavioral patterns, about all of these various wounds that can be that you don't mean, I would do it completely differently. So there's a guilt there that I can now talk to my adult children about, and that's quite healthy. And they're like, oh, mom, shut up, you're fine, but it helps me, and I'm sure long term
Yeah.
it will help them. But that guilt for doing something that you really haven't done wrong, because you really are just trying your best, and we are all just, we're kind of, a lot of us, up to our chins in it, and we're just about managing to stay afloat. We're just, coping, and having that support around. So whether it's your partner or your friends or your own mother, parents, or a psychologist or a mentor, something that's going to help you understand where you are, is incredibly valuable. But I wanted to ask you about this generational thing, because I feel like that's a big thing. We all laugh about mother-in-laws and so on, but one's own mother and if you have a mother-in-law or, equivalent, whatever that is, they have opinions.
Mm.
They have opinions, and that's often a point of real contrast. And because what I've noticed is that as a new mother, you might decide, take a very conscious decision, like, I'm not going to do it the way my parents did. And like a lot of, just to be really extreme about it, if your parents are really disciplinarian, you're likely to be completely lax with your own kids, and vice versa. If your kids were like real wild, they were just like, yeah, get on with it, do whatever, you will then give your children a lot more structure.
Mhm.
What is that about? And how do we not do that overcompensation and find a
Mm.
balance? Because that's a big one, right?
That's huge. I have such personal experience with that. I'm so resonating as you describe that. Um, it's absolutely true, that we do that. Um, For instance, so my husband and I, our parents were parents in the 80s when you just kind of kick your kids out and it was
Yeah.
very parent-centered. Like your weekends were just whatever the parents want to do, right?
Yeah.
Not that they were, our parents were not abusive, but it's very common neglect, I would say, for of the
Different
children,
times.
right?
Yeah. I mean, the
Different
number, because
times.
I'm a
Yeah.
kid of the 70s. And although this didn't happen to me, like, there are so many people who go, yeah, my parents just went to the pub and we just left in the car.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. I've heard that from my own mom and her families, and it's true. Like the bar was pretty low then, right?
Yeah.
So but of course, since then we've had, decades of research in developmental psychology is a very new field. And so there was now all this
Mm.
flux of developmental psychology and research looking at children. And so we've become very child-centric parents. So
Yeah.
the weekend is all about what the children need. So we really have seen this huge shift. And I was
Mm.
part of that. I was part of that crowd of, my kids are going to feel so like every emotion they have matters, that when they come into a room. So what happened was, they came in and they would start speaking and they're little. My husband and I would just stop everything we're doing to listen to them because so
Mm.
this was the pendulum that totally swung, right? No, we're not going to ignore our children the way we sort of felt like we were ignored. So they're going to matter so much. So fast forward a few years um, I start noticing like my husband and I can't have a conversation without being interrupted. Like
Mm.
but then it started to frustrate me because now they're 5, they're 6, they're coming in, 7, just like blah 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 blah, like these creatures that just think the world should stop because they're speaking.
Yeah.
And then I realized one day it was very much an aha, Roseanne. I was just like frustrated because then I would cue them and I'm like, we're having a conversation. And then I realized, but of course, they're just doing what we had trained them to do. Like
Yeah.
we had conditioned them to believe that everything that they say matters the most. And so here were
Mm.
these little almost narcissistics to be. So
Mm.
we had to course correct, big time. And I think, what's the cure for that? I mean, I think we all try our best, as you said. Parents, we're human. We're so fallible. We make so many mistakes. We're on our journeys to figure that stuff out. And it is humbling to be a parent. I must admit, I had a lot of very idealistic, naive thoughts of before, the amount of control I'll have. And I've had therapy, so I'm going to be this great parent. And yeah, I just made different errors. I didn't make
Mm.
the ones that I felt, my kids are the opposite of neglected. But yeah, now there's all these other impacts on them, that
Yeah.
I didn't anticipate. And I just think that's probably human nature. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think that whatever we do, we're going to mess up our
Yeah.
children, whatever.
Yeah.
And, there's two things I want to say. First of all, I think it's really interesting because you personally, Angela, you as a, you're out there, you've written the book,
Mhm.
like, on motherhood, on how to, you're the psychologist. So the expectations on you from your peers, the other mums at school, they all must look at you and go, so Angela's got this down because she's written the book. She knows exactly what she's talking about. So you've added yourself an extra layer of pressure there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I had to make sure when I wrote the book, and I even talk about it in there, like I avoided reading parenting books for a while,
Mm.
because my mom made, there's trauma history in her generation, and so I knew like I needed to do things differently than what she had done. Um, and so, but I was avoiding it at first because I was afraid, oh, I'm going to get to this page and then I'm going to see those mistakes I made and then I'm going to be, shame spiraling and not be able to
Mm.
tolerate it. I got over that and I did read and educate myself and learn a lot about conscious parenting and so that I could kind of show up differently. But I always appreciated when the experts put themselves in it because we all like nobody's perfect. So I just made sure that I talk about that in my own book to say, this is unburdening. It's not the unburdened mother. Like it's a
Yeah.
process and for me it's a lifelong journey. And I feel like also with my kids as they age, just when I start to think I know what they need and how I should parent this particular age, well, now they're teenagers and now they need something
Mm.
totally different from me.
Yeah.
So I think as moms, matrescence in my view is it could be lifelong. We're constantly challenged to evolve and grow alongside our children's growth, which is a beautiful
Mm.
thing. But yeah, we're never going to sort of get the answers or kind of figure it out perfectly. I
Mm.
don't think. I think anyone who
No.
says that they're the perfect parent, I just wouldn't believe them.
No, exactly. And then the other part of this, which makes it even more confusing, is, and again, this is, my lived experience. So I'm one of the youngest of three.
Mhm.
And if I talk to my brother and my sister, and I think this is very much the same for any family group. They've been brought up with the same parents in the same house with the same rules and the same values. But their experience of it, once they're adults and they look back at their childhood, is completely different.
Hmm.
It's like a different, like they were in a completely different relationship stuff
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
And I find that really interesting because as a mother, like you can do exactly, what you're doing. You can be the best mother, but your children are going to
Hmm.
have a completely different experience of you. And
Hmm.
that's not down to you. That's their little soul journey. That's what they have brought onto this onto this planet. Or, and you can tell me this because you've got two trains of thought. You either think, right, every person that is born arrives with a beautiful fresh soul that's been freshly scrubbed, and but it's still, it's got no conscious memories, but deep down in its soul that there are patterns and there are lessons that need to be learnt, and there are patterns that have happened before in past lifetimes, if you want to believe in that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Or they're all just freshly brand new and they've come out, but they still have this different experience. And that could be just because of their place in the family, because of the experiences. I don't know. I mean, I just find that utterly fascinating because as a parent,
Hmm.
it's impossible to teach, to behave exactly the same with every child because every child has different needs,
Hmm.
different interests, different preferences, different ways of responding. I don't know. It's an absolute minefield. So I don't envy you in guiding people through this.
No, it is. I agree. It is interesting. It is fascinating. It's in being a therapist for 20 years, I've definitely just you hear the stories and you see it time and time again. And I mean, I guess that is where, our own, there's the psychology and what the sort of research shows, but would show some of that for sure. Your sibling, we know there's patterns and dynamics with order of birth order and
Mm,
families are systems, right? So families can fall into, and there's a whole, a school of thought around family systems therapy, around helping
mm,
families heal that will certainly speak to that. And I also do think, we each have our own soul. We each come in with, I'm convinced my youngest son has lived many lifetimes. During COVID, he once guided me as a young lad, like he was, I don't know, 6, 7.
mm,
We did this little thing because, we're in lockdown and nothing to do. And so he's going to open his own spa and give massages to earn money. And so I'm there. I'm like, I'll be your customer. And he starts leading me in a guided meditation. Roseanne, I was like, where did you learn? Like, you've never heard me. Like, what are you doing? So my husband and I joke that he has this wisdom, so yeah, we are all so unique and different. And one of the things that I was naive about before actually becoming a parent is that idea that, well, yeah, you just say these are the rules or this is the family value, and you just sort of think you're going to have a lot more power and control and influence than you actually do. And now that my
mm,
children are adolescents, I almost feel like my work has been done. Like I'm here to be the structure and safety in the home if you want some
mm,
help, or like, but they have already started leaving with,
mm.
valuing peers more and just sort of wanting their identity, autonomy. So yeah, kind of really see we're not here to control our children. We really
Mm.
aren't. And
No.
so it's very humbling, and I'm always learning. So it never stops to be fascinating to me.
Yeah. I remember once I met this, we were selling our house, and it's probably if anyone's heard this story before. We were selling our house, and this woman came round. She was Russian, bless her, and we were discussing, when I met somebody, I was like, oh, so what's your family and so on. Anyway, she had kids similar ages to mine, and I said, God, it doesn't get any easier, does it? As they get older, they hit 20, and you think they'd be just off and flying. And she goes, no. She says, in Russia we have saying, small children, a small problem, big children, a big problem. I was like, oh
Yes.
my God, that is the best thing I've ever heard. So true. I look at my darling mum is 84
Mm,
and she's still supporting me emotionally and in every way. She still is there for me. She's still mothering me. Like it
mm,
never stops.
mhm.
It never stops. And we think of motherhood as that sort of, oh, we got them off to college, job done, wash
Mm.
our hands of it, see you later, kids, come back for Christmas and whatever. But no, that, becoming an adult, you need just as much. I mean, that's the tough bit. Being a kid, that's easy. Those
Mhm.
problems are, you can tell. I got two boys who are, in their late 20s and yeah, it's still not easy. I know they still need a lot of support. And of course, I love giving that to them because you can have really important and
Mhm.
interesting conversations, but it doesn't stop. My matrescence is
Mhm.
still being developed. It's still processing. And
Yeah, of course, because your relationship now that they're adults, but yeah, they still need you, want you. It's just different. And so again, right, it's just another shift of being more like peers in a way versus parenting.
yeah,
It's a different need. And so
yeah,
and then eventually grandparenting. It's just like a whole other phase.
yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
and it's beautiful and it's transformative, but it's also, yeah, not it's not static.
So your book, which is Unburdening Motherhood,
Mhm.
that aims to support mothers. How does this book support mothers? Like what is it you're trying to do with Unburdening Motherhood?
So yeah, first is I teach about what matrescence is, and I kind of go through some of those myths to start to help moms see what they might be believing, and just to get curious and sort of decondition themselves from that. And
Mm,
then I'm trained in internal family systems, which is a psychotherapeutic modality. Um, that's evidence-based in trauma healing. And so it's really just bringing that, which is, clinical sort of model of sorts into mothers' lives so they can start to use very practical, doable practices. But even more so than if they don't do the guided meditations, it's really a way about understanding ourselves. So in IFS, it's short form. We understand that we're made up of parts. I mean, we have our soul, like in IFS, it's called capital S self, which is that core essence energy, the truth of who we really are.
mm,
And the creator of IFS defined it with 8 C's, words like compassion and calm and clarity and creativity and all of these kind of elements. But
mm,
there's more to that also. I mean, I would say joy and awe and wonder are also energies of when we're fully present, right?
mm,
Present energy that we all experience because that's all kind of the essence of who we are. And we move through the world with our, some would say ego, right? We use words like ego or personality, but in IFS we see it as our parts of us that really help us live life. So we have different protector parts, right, that are really trying to help us learn and adapt and adjust in life, have our needs met, but also to avoid pain, to avoid what's harmful. And so sometimes our protective system can get in our way of really living a more free,
mhm,
liberated life.
mhm,
And so I teach that model as a way for moms to understand that my experience was we have what I call mom parts. Like many of my parts that had absorbed what it means to be a good mom became my own inner judge, my inner critic, that were sort of like working, although they had a good intention for me because they want me to be a good mom and, check all the boxes. But when we're living with a lot of intense self-criticism, it's actually, we're not thriving. It's actually
mm,
creates more inner suffering, creates more anxiety or maybe even depression if it's really intense. So it's a way to once we understand our parts fundamentally have good intentions for us because they're trying to protect us, but
mm,
really we can actually have more of a say in our life if we can start to access more of that self energy and relate to our parts. So it just really guides moms to get to know their protective parts and start to have a relationship with those parts. So instead of being sort of taken over by them, and living from those parts, they can be more integrated. They can, I mean, our parts carry gifts and strengths and abilities. They help us if we have that good, trusting relationship with them. So it really is a way of healing, and a way of understanding ourselves much better, I think more accurately. I mean, I've been a
Yeah.
therapist for 20 years, and I see the nature of parts in every client I work with. And so I think it's been very helpful for me. I mean, I know it has for me, and I hope it serves some moms out
Mm.
there who are really feeling that guilt, that self-blame, and that shame, and to have a way forward for themselves to really heal out of that.
Yeah, what an incredible gift. I think it's very yeah, it feels very aligned. And for me, like I'm listening to you speak and I'm like, absolutely, all of this, there's the self, the big S self is that listener and
Mhm.
that the parts are all the little bits of the ego that are just trying to keep you safe and protected and small and don't stick your head over the parapet. And that really impacts your entire those parts, as you call them. And I that's a great word for them because they are. They're not all just one big. There's lots of little, and it's complex. Are just trying to keep you safe, and they are parts and beliefs that have not necessarily belong to you. They quite often belong to somebody else that you were given when you were younger or when you were a teenager or at some point, or just by some careless comment by a peer or somebody once said you had a big forehead and then you just
Mhm.
had to have a fringe bangs for those in America, for the rest of your life, like there's these, and in fact you're perfectly normal. It's like all of these little beliefs that we take on board
Mhm.
are these little parts, aren't they, that hold
That's
us
right.
back. It's
That's right. They carry these experiences from early in life,
mm,
that then become burdens, right? And so
yeah.
the unburdening is really a healing process of getting to know that part, understand why it came to believe that. And often
Mhm.
it is child parts of us, experiences
Yeah.
in early life where we have painful experiences and then we make interpretations and then it's imprints in us and can
Mm,
carry through. And so it's a healing process to be able to unburden these parts. And then their energy is freed up to really be their true nature, right? They're
yeah.
this self, without having to feel, carry this belief, I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I'm somehow, wrong. That pain gets really shifted out and released. And
Mm,
it's a beautiful
yeah.
thing. And we can
Yeah.
really live more authentically as
Yeah.
we are meant to. Yeah.
This is really, I love this because it feels so aligned with the work that I do as well, in that this uncovering, this unveiling. And it's almost as like you take the cloth off, you go, ta-da, here it is, and you go, oh. Oh, that's what it is. That's it. Oh, okay. All right. So now I can see this.
Mhm.
Now I can understand this and where it came from and what it is and how it shows up and what its triggers are and all of that. Now I can begin to actually manage it and deal with it. And it's very, very personal work because everybody's got a particularly wonderfully unique mixture of all of these things. I mean, we all recognize shame and guilt and,
Mhm.
all of those kind of big ticket items, but, what they look like, what shade of color, or how deep, how spiky, how, is
Mhm.
all very, very personal. So
Yeah.
when you're working with somebody, and I love this because the book gives people insights and there'll be bits that go, that's me. And
Mhm.
no, I don't feel that. But they
Yeah.
will begin to recognize their parts, if you like, and recognize them. And having that awareness is so healing. But when you're working with somebody on one-to-one, which I'm presuming you do as well, is that right, Anja?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Then that unveiling their matrescence
Yeah.
is completely unique to them because everybody's energy is completely unique to them. And so that's the fascinating work, isn't it? It's very personal.
Yeah, it's to me it's mystical. I mean, to me, when
Yeah.
I'm doing parts work with people and how those parts show up, you're absolutely right. For some people, they're more visual, and so a lot of their
Mm.
parts they'll get images, and other people not at all.
Yeah.
For some people, it's like I don't get images. I feel it in sensations in my body,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot of variation, absolutely,
Mm.
and while there's themes, and the creator of IFS definitely has a step-by-step model of unburdening, and it's this beautiful ritual, and these are the steps, but it's also a free-flowing model. It's sort
Mm,
of this self-correcting. We flow with what's there, what's alive in the present moment. And for that particular person. And so we need to sort of have, as a therapist, I need to stay in as much self energy and make
mm,
my therapist parts sort of give me space so that I can just be in that self energy, because self energy itself is healing, right? So that's the
mm,
idea, is that we have our own self energy, and when we access that, that's actually the part, that's actually the core from which we are healing, is that list, as you called the listener,
mm,
in my mindfulness practice as well. So there's different words: loving awareness, the observer, right? There's different contemplative practices use different words, but that is kind of the root of that presence, that energy of presence
mm.
that offers healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in your work and in this parts work, in this modality that is there, that for which there is a structure, I'm
Yeah.
just interested to know, is there a somatic part to this? Is there a somatic section? Because I feel like trying to do it all up here is never
Yeah.
quite the best idea. We need to bring it into the body because that's where we hold the energy.
I 100% agree. And so while Dr. Richard Schwartz created IFS through his own experience with his clients. Susan McConnell was one of his, I guess, early students back in the day, in the 70s.
Mm.
And she's a somatic sensory motor therapist. And so she's written and done a ton of work, as have many since then.
Yeah.
So she's kind of the name that pops up into my head when I think of somatic, because she really bridged. And she has a beautiful book on somatic IFS. And
Mm.
there are many since then who are now out there really, yeah, being more integrative. And that's, I would agree with you too, Roseanne. In my work now, it very much has to involve the body,
Mm.
because that's where the emotions are stored. The body keeps the score, as we know from the
Yeah.
well-known book. It's
Yeah.
true. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. God, I feel like this conversation, I feel like it's gone like whoosh so fast. And there's so much value in here. But I'm going to let you go because I know that we've both got places to go and be. But I am so grateful for this conversation, Angele. It's been amazing. You've got so much great things to offer, so many great things to offer, I should say, use my correct words. Unburdening Motherhood is Dr. Angele Close's book. Tell people how they can get in touch with you if they'd like to work with you and just find out a bit more about you. Where can they reach you?
yeah. So I have my website is www.drangeleclose.com, and it has a contact form. You can reach out to me that way if you have any interest or want to stay connected. I have some kind of free videos on there and resources, and a newsletter, of course, that I put out every couple of weeks. And all the info on the book is there too. But right now it came out at the end of January on the 27th. So it is available at all places where you can buy books. So I'd love to hear
Fantastic.
from people. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks
Well,
for having me.
congratulations on the book. That's brilliant.
Thank
And
you.
I think that will, the title will, I hope, resonate and a lot of people will pick it up because motherhood is not, it's the most natural thing in the world, but it is the toughest thing in the world as well. It really can be. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I
yeah.
agree. Well, thanks for having me. This was great.
Thank you, Angel.